what's up, you XR150 gangsters? Welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart. In this episode, as you can see behind me, I do have this budget-friendly nugget of a bike, and we're going to be doing some conversions to it in this video to show you how to install the parts that I have in front of me. Now, quickly, let's talk about this bike. This is a budget-friendly motorcycle. It has a mechanical speedometer with a cable-driven pickup sensor. It has a carburetor. It has a drum brake in the rear. Obviously, nowadays, it's past 2020, and anytime there is a very budget-friendly motorcycle coming to the market, there are some parts compromises made so that it is very inexpensive to manufacture. One of those compromises are the lighting units on these bikes. You have these very bulky, large, not very sophisticated looking signals. You have this huge fender, and you have this taillight that leaves a lot to be desired. Now at TST, we do eliminate fenders, and we do make some really nice integrated taillights. The integrated taillights carry the signaling equipment already built into the capsule of the taillight, so you can replace your signals with that if where you live allows for that. If not, there are ways to keep both the integrated taillight signals and external signals together, and this is made possible in a plug-and-play fashion through the use of our taillight. So we are going to take the fender off. That fender does require to be trimmed. So we will make a permanent modification to this component here on this bike, but should you ever decide that you want to go back to stock, that part costs less than $50 from a place like Partzilla or MR Cycle, so no worries there. It's also pretty easy to replace it. Very, very simple stuff. All right, we are going to eliminate that fender, like I said, through a little trim. We are going to remove the taillight, and we are going to install one of our taillights in there. We're going to plug it in using the vehicle-specific connector that comes on the taillight, and then all the other connections for the signals are made plug-and-play through the use of these 3.5mm bullet connectors. And we also have pigtails on here to enable wiring in secondary signals without any additional wiring. Our signals carry male bullet connectors. Our pigtails include female bullet connectors, so it's really easy. We've thought of all the nuances on how to make this easy for you guys, so no worries there. Since we are ditching all of the license plate carrying components on the bike, we are replacing those with our beautiful CNC machined anodized aluminum bracket here that gets mounted to the taillight assembly and then subsequently mounted onto the bike. I'll show you how to configure that as well. Now, the only implication here is which lens color you're going to choose. We have clear, we have smoked. The smoked uses very lightly tinted lens material that mutes the light output by just a little bit. What we've done is we outfitted the actual circuit board with a black coating on top of it to mute out any of light reflection from within the capsule so that it looks very, very smoked, even though it is not. And then that enabled us to use very little smoked tint on this actual lens element so that we don't attenuate the light output very much. If you're concerned with light output, I always suggest that you go with the clear, but if you like the smoked, the emission difference is very, very minimal. Now, anytime you go away from using the incandescent light source in the OEM signals on one of these bikes and replace the signaling equipment with LED type signals, the current draw from the signaling system drops so low that most of the OEM flasher relays will trip up somehow. Some of them go into hyper flash where the bike will flash very, very fast. Some of them just get stuck on, some of them get stuck off. So on this particular bike, the symptom that we saw in our modification to date with just the two signal pairs that we did front and rear was that it flashed once and then it just got stuck. So we did have to replace the OEM relay with our Gen 2F flasher relay. These are available as a separate component. They're plug and play. We do have a video showing you how to install that on the bike. One additional electrical note here is that this particular bike was designed some long time ago where electrical engineers decided to run both signal sides into one circuit. One side being the ground for the active and then vice versa when you activate the other one. When you replace the OEM signals with LEDs, you will also cause a quad flash symptom where all of the signaling equipment goes at the same time. Even if you place the relay, it'll flash at the proper rate, but all of them will go. So one additional part that you will need if you don't already have this modified is our diode mod. Again, this is a separate component because some people already have that modified. We don't just jam this stuff down your throat. If you are interested in a plug-and-play solution to fix quad flash, this is available as well, and we have a video showing you how to install it. Installation's plug and play, very simple, just like the rest of our equipment. When you ditch all of the Fender lighting, you also ditch your license plate light. So we will be mounting our low profile license plate mount with this setup. I will show you how to route it. I will show you how to connect it. Just know that is a separate component. Some people choose to use it, some people choose not to use it, so we don't include it as a default part in these sets. All of our equipment is sort of like an a la carte system where you get to customize exactly what you need. So please, before you check out in the cart system on our website, make sure that you've chosen all the appropriate parts to make your installation complete. Now, all that yapping being done, I'm excited to get some screws off this bike and rip into it and show you how easy it is to install our units on this bike. In the first step, we'll be removing the license plate off the bike. We will retain the hardware that is currently holding your license plate on, and we're using that with our new TST Industries setup. If for some reason you are missing this hardware or just need an upgraded version, we do offer those on our website. We have two different types. Check that out at tstindustries.com. Next, we'll grab a 10mm socket. We'll remove this screw here. Now we will dislodge two additional fasteners from front and rear of this panel. These are friction fasteners that mount into rubber grommets. So you just pull them straight out, perpendicular to the center plane of the bike. They're just these peg type fasteners that fit into grommets with friction. I will perform the same step on this side. So now I've exposed the fastener that holds the seat on. This is also a 10mm. Let's go ahead and remove that. This fastener comes out with a sleeve washer, flange outboard, and the protruding boss inboard. Repeat on the left side. Now the seat will be free to come out. It does need to swoop back and up to be removed. This way you clear all the clipping geometry. In the next set of steps, we will be using a 10mm socket to remove these four fasteners here. And then we'll switch to a 12mm socket, remove these two screws, and then loosen these two, pivot the rack up, and then remove the tail. Quick note, the forward ones here do have a shoulder and a flange. The rear ones here are straight screws that fit through some sleeve washers. Make sure these are present, they don't pop out. This will just store itself for us here. Now we grab the tail and we need to clear the tail forward over this tab. These fasteners like to come off during this move. Before we move any further along, I wanted to make this note. These fasteners do come out of here, but they do also have a little sleeve that lives in between this assembly. So during my removal, these things popped out and fell to the table below. Just wanted to make sure you guys capture that detail because these will come out. So you'll need two sets of this hardware during the reinstallation process. All right, now we are down into the wiring here. Let's undo our cable routing guides here. And we have our main connector. And then this here is for our license plate light. Let's disconnect this equipment. And here we have our left signal. Currently, this is taken up by TST Industries signal pair. We will reconfigure this because we will be keeping an external signal set as well as our integrated tail light. But for now, let's unplug it. Let's get into this side. All right. So harness wiring goes forward, out of the way. We only need to consider this stuff here. Let's go ahead and remove the tail light. That will require switching back to the 10mm socket. We'll remove the entire unit here. And now it'll be necessary to trim away this lower fender portion from the rear shroud here. We will be using a brand new blade on a box cutter. Light cuts along this crease of these surfaces into these surfaces will give us a very, very nice cut here. What I typically do is do a locating cut with very, very little pressure, and that'll run right at the exact crease point. And then I will go over and over and over until it cuts all the way through. Now, you may notice that we do have a steel brace here that still attaches the bottom portion of this fender to the frame. That will come away at a later time. For now, I'm keeping that in place so that this entire component's rigid for me and it doesn't move all around and cause a sloppy cut. All right, so let's go ahead and start this cut. The idea is to go over and over the same cut. So be careful how you apply the pressure. All right, pretty much have a little bit more than half of it off. All right, it looks like I have the entire bottom portion detached. I'm gonna grab 12mm socket. I have just removed these two fasteners from the opposite location to this. Here, I don't think I'll be able to get in these tools in here. I'm gonna grab myself a box wrench. I just need to clear out the license plate light wire. Now, we do still have some frilly stuff going on here from our cut. So I can just refine that with a nice fine file. When I do go ahead and refine these cuts, I typically go in a single stroke from the outside to the inside. That way the outside does not get marred up. When you get down to only having a little hair sticking out, I would just leave it alone. And if you are bothered by those little hairs from the polypropylene material, you just pass a lighter over it and melt them down. Just don't dwell in any area because you will make that plastic a little bit more shiny. All right, so I've taken some time here to perfect my cut edge. I scraped off all the little frillies. I used my edge of my nail to get some of that off. Like I said, you can pass a flame over this, just don't dwell in one area because you're gonna flame polish the polypropylene plastic and then that would just look odd. That would just burn off and cinch off the little frillies that are sticking out. Now we're looking good. Let's grab our tail light. At this point, you probably noticed that this is pretty floppy here. Now, don't worry. After all of the components have been reassembled, there will be additional mounting points picked up to hold this rigid, and it will be rigid enough for our use case. I'm gonna undo the wiring loom, stretch it out, and we will bring this tabbed portion inside here. It's supposed to register around the perimeter while the ears coincide with the mounting bosses here that the original taillight was mounted to. Okay, so right now these teeth will be kind of visible. Once we get this cinched down, it'll somewhat compress in there, no big deal. Before we install this chunk on here, we will have to install the license plate bracket on it. That's this flat bracket. TST logo stays upright and legible. I need to grab the appropriate hardware from the hardware baggie, and that is 2 sets of this fastener pair, the countersunk screw, and a little flange lock nut. So by superimposing this on here, we notice the innermost holes are the appropriate holes to mount this through. Countersunk screw goes through the outside, through this hole to the inside, and cap that off with the nut. Repeat. Now we will need a 3mm Allen and also an 8mm either box wrench, open-ended, or a socket. I'm going to use a socket in this case. All right, we're looking good here. Let's get this fastened. I'm going to grab the screws that came out of the OEM light. I'm going to add a washer per screw from our hardware kit. Okay, now making sure that our little lip and these little tabs here go inside the sub tray shroud. I will now use a 10mm socket to tighten down on these connections. Bottomed out and tightened down slightly is all it takes. We do not want to overstress the plastic components here. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's talk about wiring. First, we obviously want to mate the main connector. That is the simplest thing to do. Just find the keying. This little detent goes in the ratchet window. Boom, good to go. Now we'll need to figure out the signal situation. All of the females here contain a black and a green, black and a brown. These are your grounds for the secondary signals. These are the positives. They are all equipped with female bullet connectors and a sheath. We have these naked bullet connectors here that are supposed to fit into the orange and the blue of these connections. So we'll need to figure out which side's which. Let's go brown to blue first, and green to orange. Now on the harness side of the Honda electrical system, the bike harness has green designations for ground. On our wiring designations, the green is a positive wire, so please do not make that mistake. The greens on the Honda side stay not connected, and we're taking up the blue and the orange here with these wires. Let's power up the bike, and let's see. Okay, right, left, signal. I got these right. So green goes to the orange and brown goes to blue. B to B, G to O. Now, insulation. We do have these insulating sleeves here on the harness side from Honda. If you push these bullets in far enough, technically they don't protrude. I don't want to trust that. These caps do have tendency to slide around and move. So I will use some electrical tape and lock the end of this down in a way that our positive wires will not come out, and therefore they will not touch ground somewhere and cause a short circuit, blow a fuse. Just making sure all of the bullet connectors are properly seated. Now, we do have these pigtails here. Each one, like I said, each pair contains a positive wire. So anytime signaling is engaged on the taillight, these two will have intermittent plus 12 volts, which means if they were to become exposed like this, touch ground somewhere, at that point, it will blow a fuse. We don't want to do that. So if you're not using external signals, you will also need some electrical tape and get at least the positive wires folded over and wrapped tight so that they do not expose. For our purpose here, we are using external signals, whether you're using the OEM signals or our TST industry signals or any other signal pair that has 3.5 millimeter bullets. The next step will be as follows. We're gonna find us a pair here. Since we know green is the left side, we are going to connect this yellow, which is positive, to our signal to the green. Once the positive is plugged in, I want to make sure that it is insulated, and we need to find appropriate ground here. Plug it in. Make sure it's insulated. And like I mentioned before, these do have the ability to move, so we will lock them down with electrical tape. Now, these are TST Industries signals. They do have a different color code. If you were installing the OEM signals here still, just know that the green is ground, like I mentioned. So ground, even though it's green, goes to the black, and then the positive on this side goes to the green. Maybe a little confusing, but if you just follow this step by step, no big deal. All right, this side is done. I will configure this side in the same fashion without commenting. Now with all of our connections made and insulated, let's go ahead and see how we could tuck all this stuff away. I want to figure out the best cable management here, even though we are not completely done. I just inspect this to make sure it's coming together properly and we won't be making extra bulk somewhere. It's looking pretty good. So now, if you're not running the license plate light, you will just skip the next step I will be portraying and then move on to the reverse order of disassembly as I will show it. If you are doing the license plate light, this is the perfect time to mount it physically and wire it. We do have a little hole above the license plate bracket in the tail light. This is how you will route the license plate light into the bike. Basically just bottom it out carefully, making sure that the wire is not twisted. And you can choose to cut this and strip it again, or you can bundle it up. I'm just gonna bundle it up. Our wire pair to connect into is right here. Our license plate light is universalized, so we do not have vehicle specific connectors available for the license plate light. However, the set does include two posi tap connectors, which are toolless tap connectors, and they're very easy to use. You'll remove the bottom larger diameter screw-on cap from the body of the connector, exposing the slit that fits around the wire. We're gonna go for ground first. Ground is green. Put the wire through the slit, and then the body of the connector has a little piercing element that threads on with the body, pierces through the shielding of the wire, and makes the connection for us. I'm going to do both sides of this connection. We have the black with brown, or rather black with chocolate trace wire here. That is the license plate light. All right, I've connected both wires now. At this point, we take off the smaller threaded cap. It does have the threaded portion and a blunt portion. I will pass the red positive wire from our license plate light through the blunt side, having some of the conductor protrude past the threaded side. And now I will thread this on here onto the connector while maintaining positive pressure on this wire towards the inside of the connector. And once this pressurizes the internal conductor against the conductor in here, give it a little tug test. Now that's good to go. I'll repeat the process here on the ground. And now I will want to test it. My license plate light is in fact active. We're good to go here. While I have this powered up, I'm going to test all of my equipment. I have left signal in the capsule, left outboard signal, right, good to go. Brake. This taillight does have a standard brake pattern, which means you press the brakes, it stays on solid. If you want a brake alert function, like strobe brake, we do sell a separate component called brake light modulator. It does have a connector that is compatible with these connectors here. It just plugs in line. We do have a separate video showing you how to install that. I'm going to use the twisty tie that came with my license plate light to manage the bulk of this wiring. All right, this is all looking good here. I'm just gonna reroute some of the wires for better bulk distribution. Okay, that's looking good. Let's go ahead and tuck these guys away now. The better you distribute this bulk, the less likely it is that you will have anything bulging from this tail setup. You want it to be nice and cosmetic, because this is a cosmetic upgrade. All right, so from my knowledge of my previous installations on this bike, I know this will work pretty well if during the reverse order of disassembly, when you place the top tail fairing on top of here, if it bulges up and doesn't bolt down nice and even, then you'll have to get back in here and just manage this bulk a little bit better to make sure that these components do not press up on that tail. I think we're pretty good for our purpose here. I'm going to bring the tail back into view. Now, we do have these fasteners taken out of here, and I believe it's going to be more difficult to put them on after the fairing's in place. So let's go ahead and replace them now. If you remember in a previous step, I did talk about these little inserts that need to be placed in here. Threaded part to the bottom, flat part on top, and our little insert right in between, just like that. If they are very loose and sliding around and coming off rough on you, then you could tighten this down a little bit. There we go. Now the tail comes in. We'll need to get this tab through the slot here first. To help, you can press this entire thing down, but be careful not to strain it. That'll get it aligned for you, get it moving through very nice and easily. All right, good here. Going to replace some of these fasteners in here. Remember, the shouldered and flanged screw goes here. I will unlock these fasteners and bring this back around here, making sure that everything mates up properly. It's looking good. Now I can replace these longer fasteners through here. The holes typically don't line up here, so you have to pull up on the taillight assembly until you get those holes concentric. I like to engage all of the threads around this entire area before I tighten anything down. Still have these M8 screws with 12mm heads. We need to get seated. When all of the threads have been started, we can go ahead and start tightening all this stuff down. These two fastener pairs do have nuts from the inside, so we will need a 12mm on the inside holding the nut. All right, let's grab our seat, bring that back into view. And now we'll need to align several things here. We do have this window, this slot needs to line up with the tab catch here, and then these bosses will have to align with their appropriate area there. One additional area here is where we fit into these hooks on the frame. So all of those things have to simultaneously fit together. Slide and lock. Okay, good here. Going to replace the shoulder washer and the screw. Now I'll be replacing this panel here. First, I will find the tabbed in location like so. This entire long tab has to fit under the seat, and then we will find the locations for the friction fasteners and pop those in. Now the screw gets replaced. These also have shoulder washers in them. Our last remaining step here is the reinstallation of our license plate. All of my tests so far of the lighting system showed proper flash rate. Now that is because we already have the diode mod installed and we already have our flasher relay installed on this bike. If those components are not present on your bike, you will likely have issues. So I would encourage you to pick those up, those other products, in combination with this set, so that you avoid any problems you may have. Now, we do have double stick tape applied to the license plate light on this particular bike. It is fixed in place. When you clamp it down, there's no need for that. If you prefer to make sure that the license plate light doesn't move around, you can apply that double stick tape. Otherwise, you just clamp it in place and it's good to go. Tighten it down. Let's give it one more test. Running light, license plate light, brake, right signal, left signal. All right, all functions go. We are good to go. All right, I do believe we are 100% done here. I really love the change in look back here. I do like the slimmer taillight. It still packs a really big brightness punch, but in a much smaller form factor, and it makes the bike look a lot more modern and sport inspired. If you like what you see here, check out tstindustries.com. We have these parts ready to go, ready to ship to you. We also have other parts for other bikes you may have in your stable, so check us out. I hope you like and subscribe, and drop me a comment. I'd like to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about the parts and the videos, all that good stuff. Thanks again for watching. Ride safe. See you later.